It's Wednesday, so it's time for the Word of the Week. And here we have another one of those words that, based on the context in which it's used, it has a slightly different meaning. Not so much so as some of the others that we've looked at, but it's an interesting word, and I think it's worthy of our exploration. So what is the Word of the Week? It is threskeia. Threskeia means religion. Religion as the practices and rites of devotion to a particular deity. It's the things that people do and don't do, the feasts, the sacrifices and sacraments, the offerings, the washings, the rituals, the things that are that form the body of practices that the devotees of a particular deity regularly engage in. Okay, so it's the cult of a deity, and I want to stop on the word cult for a moment. I don't mean that in the modern context of how we say, oh, that group is a cult. The technical meaning of cult is that body of beliefs, practices, rituals, rites, etc., that are directly attached to a particular faith group. Like they believe in this, and therefore they do those things. So the word only appears 4 times in the New Testament, which is strange because it appears a lot in Hellenistic literature. So it's a very common word among the Greek writers, but in the New Testament it only shows up 4 times. There are 1 or 2 other uses of cognates of the word where it's used like an adjective or something like that. But the interesting thing is a lot of people have taken the paucity of the use of this word in the New Testament as evidence that at the time the New Testament was written, Christianity didn't really have a fully formed cult. It didn't have a body of practices that was common to people who were believers in Jesus. So therefore, the word didn't make a lot of sense for them to start using, because it's not like you say today, well, I'm a Presbyterian, so I do this, or I'm a Catholic, so I do that. You know, the confession, confirmation, infant baptism, the last rites, Lent, Ash Wednesday. These things are part of the cult of a particular denomination, but not necessarily parts of the cult of another Christian denomination. But early on in Christianity, this didn't exist yet, so our word of the week isn't used a lot about Christianity because they were a fledgling group finding their way, and there was a lot of variety between, say, the way things were being done in Ephesus versus Philippi versus Jerusalem. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples of our word of the week in action, and we'll see the nuanced differences in how it's used. First up, Acts chapter 26, verse 5 from the ESV with the Koine supplied, as are the other examples today. They have known for a long time, if they are willing to testify, that according to the strictest party of our religion, threskeia, I have lived as a Pharisee. So here, Paul states that within the recognized range of Judaism, there are different sort of subgroups, and he himself was a practitioner of the strictest part of their religion. He lived as a Pharisee. So he was very concerned about the letter of the law and the meticulous keeping thereof, and was deeply and obviously devoted to that thing. So what we know is that within Judaism, within the religion of Judaism, within the overall cult of Judaism, there were subsets, and Paul was a practitioner by his own declaration of the strictest subset, the Pharisees. Let's carry on and take a look at Colossians chapter 2. This is 16 through 18. There's a lot to read here, but there's a payoff for it at the end. So therefore, let no one pass judgment on you in questions of food and drink, or with regard to a festival or a new moon or a Sabbath. These are a shadow of the things to come, but the substance belongs to Christ. Let no one disqualify you, insisting on asceticism and worship of angels, threskeia ton angelion, going on in detail about visions, puffed up without reason by his sensuous mind. So notice, Paul says, don't let anybody judge you regarding what they may be claiming are elements of a Christian cult. For you to be a good Christian, you should be keeping the Sabbath correctly, observing the lunar calendar, observing particular feasts. Paul says that's not for you to worry about. Those were things from Judaism that pointed to Christ, that were a foreshadowing. Their fulfillment is in Christ, and it doesn't make you a good or a bad Christian if you don't keep, or if you do keep, say, the Feast of Tabernacles. Right? So then he references specifically what the ESV translates the worship of angels, but it's literally threskeia, religion, ton angelion, of the angels. There are people who are advocating for devotion, religious rites and practices, giving devotion to specific angels, and Paul says, set that stuff aside. This stuff is not a part of you being a Christian. And this is more evidence of sort of the fledgling church working its way through what does it mean in practice to be a Christian, to be a Jesus follower. Let's carry on. Oh, before we carry on, if you go and look at verse 23, there's a word that Paul coined. It doesn't appear anywhere else, and it is threskeia. It's willed religion. It's religion that comes from your desires. In other words, like religious devotions that you came up with on your own. Pretty interesting stuff. He says Christianity is about a person. That person is Christ. That person is Jesus, and it's not about the stuff that you came up with your head or that somebody else came up with and told you. You can't be a real Christian or a good Christian unless you do X. Pretty fascinating stuff. Let's carry on, go to James chapter 1, verses 26 and 27. If anyone thinks he is religious, thraskos, and this is an adjective cognate from threskeia, our word of the week, and does not bridle his tongue but deceives his heart, this person's religion, he threskeia, is worthless. Religion, threskeia, that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. So notice what James says, the overseer of Christianity at Jerusalem, brother of Jesus, says that pure and undefiled Christian practice, the real religion of Christianity as of the first century writing time of his epistle, is to visit and care for the afflicted and to keep yourself unstained by the things of the world. That's what it means to follow Jesus in practice, according to James, writing in the first century, before we had liturgies and councils and the repetitions of creeds and formalized prayers and sacraments that partaking of grant you entry into the kingdom and all those other things. He says if you're following Jesus, you will visit the afflicted and keep yourself unstained from the world. That's the cult of Jesus, according to James in his epistle written in the first century. So there we have it, our word of the week, threskeia, religion, the cumulative practices attributed to a specific, attributing devotion to a specific deity. Not much said about that in Christianity in the first century because it just hadn't been formalized and formulated as of yet. Thanks for watching. Hope that was good for you. You know all the stuff to do. If you did like it, leave me some feedback in the comments. And until next time, Charis Kairene Humin, grace and peace to you.